The three of us, Terry Lester, who played Jonah, myself, I played Ruth, and Samuel, we were like the police force in this, it was the futuristic society. We were to do good, help society, and it felt good playing a role like that. And hopefully we could teach the kids a thing or two and get them thinking about certain issues of the day.
Ark II was the future, in more ways than one. Saturday morning television of the 1970s was dominated by animation, but Filmation expanded the landscape with serious live-action adventure series. Following the success of their superheroic Shazam, Filmation debuted Ark II in September 1976 on CBS. This new series was set in 2476 on an Earth that had become an ecological wasteland. Roaming the scorched land aboard the futuristic vehicle Ark II were three young scientists and their talking chimpanzee. Their mission was to bring the hope of a new future to mankind. Now, turn back the clock with the cast and crew of television's groundbreaking science fiction classic. Climb into the roamer, fire up your flying backpack, and prepare yourself for the launch of Ark II.
CBS, 1976, Ark II. Boy, did we have fun doing Ark II. We built that piece of machinery and sent it out on a freeway to Paramount Ranch to shoot the series, and people thought they were seeing the space shuttle land. It was really awesome. It was built on a truck base that was worth about $75, and we spent $75,000 to fill it with this stuff around it. The truck kept falling apart.
CBS paid an extra amount of money for the construction of those two vehicles, since they couldn't be amortized effectively over 13 episodes. The problem, of course, was that anything you build like that isn't going to run forever. So we had a lot of breakdowns and had to do a lot of work on them to keep them going.
The Ark was manufactured specifically for the show, and there was one and only one. It was the prototype. And I believe it was the Brubaker group that had put it all together for us. And what it was we had an old 5 or 10 ton chassis that they had built, welded, and strapped on all the elements that were the superstructure of the body. The interior was all on a stage. There were some problems in terms of visibility with driving it. All the scenes that you see in the main title and where it's really going fast, we shot out towards Edward Air Force Base at Dry Lake, and did those with chase cars and all, where we didn't have an issue of anything else being in the way. But the rest of the time it moved pretty slowly on the roads out at the ranch. And one of the things was it was always breaking down. It was sort of a running joke. We did have a standby welder sort of crew that in the morning, if we didn't have anything immediately to do, we'd try and do scenes that involved it driving, and we'd go until something broke or fell off, and then we'd have the standby crew sort of put it back together. And if you look at the show, you'll see that sometimes the hubcaps are on and sometimes they aren't. That was just part of doing it.
I think everybody had to get used to the idea of live action being made for Saturday morning. Budgets were extremely low compared to what was being done in primetime television and in other places in terms of shooting film. We shot in the summer, and in California the days are very long, so the workday went. We shot always until the sun went down to get everything we possibly could.
All our Ark II episodes were fortunately shot during the summer break, so we did have the benefit of having nice long sunny days, and if you look at the episodes, you'll see that there's never a night scene. We shot pretty much all daylight exteriors except for the interior of the Ark, which was a set that was built on the stage back at the studio. But most of the episodes we shot out at what is now Point Dume State Park, but it was or Malibu State Creek Park, but it was then the Paramount Ranch. And it was a wonderful place. It had a lot of sort of old crumbling sets from things like Planet of the Apes and Sand Pebbles, and a lot of things that we utilized into Ark II itself. And there were big open spaces where in the episodes you'll see we could have people on horseback and people on horse-driven carts, and then we needed a lot of room just to drive the Ark itself, which was a bit of an unmanageable beast on small roads.
Ark II log, entry number 1. I, Jonah, Ruth, Samuel, and Adam are fully aware of the dangers we face as we venture into unknown, maybe even hostile areas. But we're determined to bring the promise of a new civilization to our people and our planet.
The people in it, Terry Lester, who became a big star of soap operas, I guess, and this was the first thing he did. Jean Marie Hahn, who I saw just a couple of minutes ago, somehow managed to look more beautiful and younger today than she did then.
Terry Lester, who played Jonah, I think this was fairly early on in his career, and unfortunately he's passed away, and I know he went on to have quite an illustrious soap opera career, and I remember that when I first saw him on a soap opera, it was the first time I'd seen him without the beard, because I only knew him as Jonah. He was a wonderful, athletic kind of guy who was pretty much game for anything.
I was an NBC contract player. I was one of the last contract players. David Tebbutt and Al Trasconi signed me. They sent me to acting school at that time. It was back in 1974 or 75. And then they set me up with wonderful agents, and at that time I had an agent, Jack Fields at the time. And they had this lead out for this children's show, Ark II. One-of-a-kind show, a new type of show, that it was for Saturday morning, live action with a moral to each story. And I said, that sounds interesting. So I went and met with Lou Scheimer and Norm Prescott, and we had several meetings, and I was so glad they said, you're the one. Our co-workers we had on the show, they were wonderful. My co-stars, Terry, I think he was a seasoned actor. He's done quite a few shows before. And he was always very knowledgeable about the protocols. It was my first real series. I've done commercials in the past, but this was my first series. So with a lot of the protocols, I learned a lot on the show. I remember it was Jose's first show also, and he was a minor at this time. And his mother and father accompanied him at all the shootings. And it was a very family-like atmosphere.
You can do it. I know you can.
Jean Marie Hahn, it was early on in her career when she was doing it, and you know, she was just, you know, a wonderful young actress. Jose Flores was a young Latin gentleman, and he sometimes would have trouble. It was interesting. He'd be with his family because he was a minor, and the family had to be there, and they spoke Spanish. And so sometimes he'd come to the set, and he'd be thinking in Spanish as his lines were trying to come out in English, and so sometimes he'd get his syntax wrong and all, and so sometimes we had to work with him a little bit on that. But he was a nice young guy, and I keep running into him over the years. He's been in to read for things that I've been on or had day parts or something. He's still active, I think, in the business.
Then there's the monkey. And if he were here, he'd be biting me right now. That was a vicious little monkey. And I did the voice for that monkey. And when that monkey talked, it was me going, "That's the way I used to talk to the monkey, because I used to inhale rather than exhale."
As far as the monkey was concerned, probably the biggest problem was that the actors had to work with the monkey. We could step back and the trainer could come in and do whatever he wanted, but the actors couldn't do that.
We had one scene where all four of us, Terry, myself, Jose Flores, and the monkey Mooch, we were inside the truck. And when the director said action, the hatch, the door was supposed to open, and we were supposed to run out all at once. Well, I think with everything happening simultaneously, well, my hand was down there, the monkey's was right to the right of me, and the level of my finger was right at the level of his mouth, and I guess my finger looked like it might taste good, so he took a little bite of my finger right when the director said action. I go, whoa. I mean, it was fine, but yeah, they rushed me to the hospital. I was up to date on all my vaccines, and yeah, we stopped production for a couple hours, but everything was fine. Everything was fine. Oh, but not too many people have been bitten by a monkey before.
I thought the monkey did very well, you know, in terms of performance. He seemed to know what was going on. It gave you that illusion. But of course, when you're making film like that, you can take single shots of the monkey at some other time and fit it in if you wanted a monkey that looked happy or a monkey that looked sad, you know. But he was all right.
The monkey, Adam, was, his real name was actually Moochie. And he was a young juvenile chimp. It was the first time I'd ever worked with a chimpanzee on the show. The trainers could pretty much get Moochie to do what we needed to do. He was kind of pretty funny in that we had one guy, a grip on the show, Big John, and for whatever reason, Big John and Moochie seemed to really get along. And they would almost groom each other. If we weren't working, you know, you'd look over and there'd be Big John, and he'd be sort of rubbing Moochie's hair, and Moochie'd reach up and sort of grab his hair. It was sort of sweet. And underneath the outfit, Moochie was in diapers. And as you can imagine, I mean, we talked about this with the wardrobe with everybody. It was pretty warm out where we were shooting. It was summer and it was hot. And so we'd get Moochie out of the costume whenever we could. And so here's this chimp in his diapers wandering around the set. So it was sort of like having our own little child.
We had to know our lines quickly. There was no room for error. Get it done, hopefully in 1 or 2 takes. Unfortunately, though, because we were outside, it was an action show. Everything had to do with timing of the vehicles, doors opening, and we had Moochie, the monkey. So things didn't always proceed as quickly as we wanted it to. Oftentimes we'd have to reshoot things because of me, Terry, or us, or the monkey, and sometimes I remember we'd have to take a monkey break. You know, he'd have to go eat. I mean, Moochie had quite a few restrictions, and I know Samuel also did, or Jose Flores did too, because he was a minor at the time. But we shot as fast as we could. It was a quick pace. 2.5 days is quick for a half-hour show.
Your days as a tyrant are over.
They are not.
In terms of development of Ark II, I think it was well underway in the development of it when I started to set up the production and everything like that. It was an interesting concept, an early form of that post-apocalyptic period of the ideas the world has been destroyed and this is what's left. The shows, to me, always had something to say, and I liked that, you know. My generation comes from early days of television, in which it was important what the show is about, not merely to entertain, which I think is today's mantra. You know, if the audience laughs, great. If they, you know, we wanted to say things, we wanted to express things. I had been in World War II and had been 4 years in the Navy as a naval aviator, and I had come out with, you know, charged up with doing good things and looking for a better world. And that was true of an awful lot of people, particularly CBS in New York, and even coming out here. And Lou himself, very conscious of that and wanted as much as he could in the shows that he did for children, that something was being said that they might remember, you know, and that was something that they should know about. So there was a moral involved, but not thrown out there, you know. It was in there and the kids would get it.
My wife Susan and I started writing for Filmation along about 75 because Bob Specht, who was the executive story editor and producer on the Ark IIs, called us and said, need scripts, can you help? And you want to come in and pitch? And so we did. That's how we got involved with the Ark IIs. And that was just at the cusp, the beginning and groundbreaking television, Saturday morning live action. No one had ever tried it before. It was always animation. And we started writing, and because it was all new, there were no rules. You could do virtually anything you want. Come up with a story, present the story. If it got approval, then you went to first draft. And everything was moving quickly because they wanted to shoot in a hurry. So our ideas were quickly accepted, and we got rolling. And the Ark IIs, with this post-apocalyptic world and the big vehicle traveling through it and the jetpack and all of that, were kind of novel at the time. And it was a great look as well for the series.
Art Nadell and Lou and Norm and others had some idea of what restrictions we had, and the writers were tuned into that. But then they would come in with a script that wasn't shootable. You know? So we'd sit down and say, okay, look, we can't get this scene done. It's not possible within the 3-day shooting schedule. It can't be done. Let's see how we can move the scene around, or can we combine it with this location? We had location people, and I did some of it myself. I'd go out and look for locations and see what I could find, you know. That kind of an operation is a kind of full-time, day and night, weekends, everything. Not a 9-to-5 job.
I was the first assistant director. I'd moved up from the second assistant director when I came to Filmation. And basically I worked with the director in terms of finding the locations, scheduling, and the day-to-day running of the set. I was the one that rolled the cameras, he was the one that set action. I got an opportunity to direct on Ark II, and it was all really because of Hollingsworth Morris. My first job as a first AD had been the season before with him, and he had been an AD before he had become a director. So he was wonderful in teaching me the subtleties of doing my job, and as we'd gotten to become close friends that first year, and he asked what I really wanted to do, and I said, I want to eventually direct. He was very instrumental in helping to make that happen. And in fact, when there was some question as to my first directing assignment with Filmation as to was there a slot available, and Holly just said, well, give him one of mine. And that was how I got my very first one, and then the Ark II Orcus episode was my second directing assignment for him.
While you're up there, see if you can see that tank.
Just as they did more and more live action shows at Filmation, they needed to come up with designs and artwork, and as much as they could do in-house without farming it out to somebody else, they did. And they would tend to cast people based on their previous experience and figured, well, if he can do this, he can probably do that. And so I ended up getting a lot of odd and different design jobs for the live action shows. On Ark II, I designed the costumes for the main characters. They're futuristic costumes. I didn't design any of the stuff for the barbarians or the post-apocalyptic characters. And we went through several basic ideas, but ultimately the two-color scheme was the way we went. And at one point we wanted to do a bare arm, but that was considered to be too unique at the time.
We had costumes that were custom fitted to all of us. They were very hot. That's the only thing I can remember. There were double layers of this polyester, unbreathable material. And they were skin tight, of course. And I just remember the minute the director said cut, we'd all take off our tops and replace it with something else that was a little cooler. The costumes were fun, and then we had the belts, and we had the cuffs, and they had all these fancy buttons on that didn't do anything, but they lit up and they looked great. So we used our imagination a lot. It was a lot of fun. There was one show Henry directed. They aged me about 100 to 120 years. I was put in a time warp, and I was put in makeup. They had me wear a mask, so they aged me with a mask, with a wig, and I had to wear that for 2 days in the heat. We had about 100 plus degree heat, and we were filming at that time. It was called the Canaan Ranch. They were considering having Terry age. They wanted to age Terry too. They said he had some issues on appearance. So they said, oh, Jean's not. She's very cool and easygoing. So they aged me. So I was the one stuck with 2 days wearing that mask.
Most of our guest cast were pretty much a ragtag group that we were always dirtying down. Fuller's Earth and burlap were kind of the mainstays there. But our principal cast had these specially designed costumes, which unfortunately were polyester and were pretty hot. So whenever they got a chance, we designed them with zippers in the back or on the sides so that they could get out of the tops as often as possible. The guest cast we had on all these shows were really pretty special. We got a lot of really big-time actors and actresses who, in some cases, it was people that went on to become big that were starting out, but we got a lot of adult actors who came because it was, 1 or 2 days was all they had to work. And for a lot of them it was an opportunity to do something that their children could see them in, as opposed to the primetime, nighttime, maybe cop shows they were doing or whatever. Jonathan Harris, Jeffrey Lewis, Helen Hunt had one of her earliest jobs on Ark II. Jim Backus. We had a lot of really great people.
The jet jumper was the flying device that we used, and it was a real thing. I mean, it was not fake. I mean, those shots of that jet flying through the air were legitimate. We shot them all in one day and used them over and over and over. I can't remember the kid's name. He was a kid. He was not a very big guy because they couldn't handle a big guy. So those things lasted for about 40 seconds before the fuel was out. Now, I know we talked about it before, but he wore a helmet. The reason he really needed the helmet, there was a hammer in the helmet. And when he went up over 20 seconds, the hammer hit him in the head. Now, if the hammer didn't knock him out, the fall would. So he knew he had to land. Every once in a while, he would not land in time, and it was really a mess. And we did two of them. The ones that Terry Lester used were mock-ups that we made, and we had him jump through the air and stuff like that. That was a true flying thing.
The rover, it was called the rover, and what it actually was a VW Thing, which were very popular at the time, and we had just built overlays on it. That was a vehicle that was very maneuverable, and anybody that could drive a VW could drive it. The only person that we ever had to double driving it was the monkey, and in which case we'd tow it, and the trainer would just have him hold onto the wheel and pretend to drive. But it was great, and it was their means of transport leaving the mothership, so to speak.
It was fun driving that, but it only drove like a mile or two at a time. So we couldn't go very far with it, even though we'd like to. We couldn't escape anywhere.
How do you two feel?
A little wobbly. Wow, what a mind blower.
We'll be all right. Thanks to you, pal.
It was just such a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful summer. Working with Lou Scheimer, Norm Prescott, Dick Rosenblum. I remember the writers, Arthur Nadel, everyone, the cast with Terry and Jose. They were wonderful to work with. It was truly like a family. They welcomed my brother and my sister at that time. They were young. My brother maybe was 14 or 15 years old. My sister was maybe about 8 years old. They were able to come in. They worked as extras during the summer. So it was like all of us joining together to get a project done for this new type of live-action children's show. The whole experience was memorable for me. I did continue on with acting for about 10 years after. I went on to do some nighttime series for the different networks, and it kept me pretty active. However, I did finish my studies at UCLA, and then I got my doctorate of pharmacy. I went into medicine from USC. So I'm currently a pharmacist. I have a pharmacy out in Ventura County, and that's where I have my patients, and that's where my heart is right now.
The experience of the 2 summers that I spent working at Filmation were really pretty fabulous. It was a small family group. It wasn't a major studio. We were working out of a warehouse and out of trucks out in the San Fernando Valley. And it truly was one of the most pleasant experiences I've had to filmmaking in my career. I continued doing 1 hours, then got into comedies. I was production manager on Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. Produced a show called Sybil for 4 years, which was quite successful. And currently I'm line producer on a show called My Name is Earl.
Looking back at my career at Filmation, my 2 years at Filmation, they were wonderful, exciting years, frankly, and interesting years, and I enjoyed doing that kind of thing. I liked that ability to work in a small unit, and particularly with Lou. Norm wasn't as directly involved as Lou was. Lou was a remarkable person, and I'll never, ever cease to remember how we worked together.
We hauled the scripts out of our file cabinet and read them as we were making dinner. And as I read them aloud and acted some of the parts, Susan said, you know, these were darn good. This was good work. This was good writing. And the social consciousness that accompanied them was worthwhile and predates concerns that are now in everyday newspapers and in our lives. But we were proud of the work, and we're really glad that our kids and our grandkids can now see this stuff, and we're looking forward to the release of the DVDs.
What are you reading?
A newspaper. Ben's grandfather gave it to me.
Oh, anything in it about us?
I don't know. It's written in Greek.
The fans are wonderful. There is a following for Ark II. I was amazed. My brother called me, a few years back, and he said, "Jean, did you know there's a website for Ark II?" And I said, "No way." So we looked it up, and yeah, there truly is. It's quite an extensive website. I remember at that time receiving fan letters too. And it was nice to hear from the fans. They watched the show, they asked questions about filming the show, and then they even ask about me, and I go, oh, I felt so humble. I go, I'm not used to people, looking up to me like that, fans. So it was a very nice experience. Ark II, I believe, left a legacy, and I'm very proud to be part of it. It was the first show that was live action, and we had wonderful actors, wonderful directors. Everyone associated with that show are very highly respected in their fields. And I think a lot of people wanted to get involved in that show. There was a moral to every story. And the mission was, let's get a good story out for the kids, teach them a thing or two, or give them some food for thought about the issues of the day.
I was delighted when I got called for this because I haven't seen an episode of Ark II in 30 years probably, other than the one DVD I had of which was a beta of the episode that I directed. So I'm thrilled. But if you go on internet on any of these things, there's a huge fan base. I'm not sure where they're necessarily seeing them, but it was a solid little show. We did them in 3 days, and they were kind of fun, and they had a very nice light tone to them, and we had some pretty good actors. I just hope everybody who gets the DVD enjoys them as much as we enjoyed making them. I mean, they were really, at the time we made them, they were really kind of cutting edge for what they were.
When I got the call regarding the DVD release, I was excited. I go, wow, that is very cool. It keeps coming back to you. So it's kind of fun to have the DVD being released, and hopefully another generation will be able to enjoy it. I'd like to thank the fans for being supportive, and I hope they enjoy this DVD set. And without the fans, we wouldn't be able to do all this. So we do it for them.
I would really like to think about what this means to the fans, and what the fans mean to, when I say us, I mean the people who produce that show, the people who are in that show, the actors who, up till today, remember that as a wonderful experience. And I want to thank those people because they are bringing back the DVDs. If they did not exist, they certainly would not be done for the new generation of kids because they wouldn't understand what we were talking about. But as parents and as adults, and with their enthusiasm, it just makes all of us who worked on it feel very, very good. And I want to thank them very much.
Thank you, Ruth. We'll never forget you or what you've done for us.
That's what we're trying to do, Jeff. Help others. Goodbye, sir, and good luck.
Oh, wait. We must touch to say goodbye. That's the rule.
That's a good rule. Goodbye.
Bye.
Then there's the monkey. And if he were here, he'd be biting me right now. That was a vicious little monkey. And I did the voice for that monkey. And when that monkey talked, it was me going, "That's the way I used to talk to the monkey, because I used to inhale rather than exhale." That's better than Alan Oppenheimer can do. Alan Oppenheimer. Sorry, Alan Oppenheimer. Scheimer, what the hell am I doing?
All right, we'll cut there.